Okay, so we've gotten a bunch of messages about what everyone is calling Book 7 of Plato's Republic.
Yeah, seems like a lot of you are really digging into this section.
So think of this as your shortcut to the good stuff. We're diving deep into those ancient ideas, but we're pulling out what's really important and connecting the dots,
Yeah,
in ways that you might not expect.
exactly. No one wants to feel like they're lost in a library full of dusty old books, right?
Right.
We're here to be your guides to help you see those key insights and how it all fits together.
So Plato's Republic, like just as a quick reminder, it's like one of the most important philosophical works ever written.
Absolutely, it's foundational.
And the section we're focusing on today is what we're kind of like thematically grouping as Book 7, right?
Yeah, it's not a modern chapter division or anything, but it works for us.
Okay, so Book 7 tackles some of Plato's like biggest questions, about justice, about the perfect society, and just like what it even means to be human.
Right, what does it mean to live a good life? It's all in there.
Right. And the reason why this matters to you listening right now is because these questions that Plato is wrestling with, they're still so relevant.
They really are.
Like, what makes a good leader? How do we even really know anything? What's the best way to organize ourselves and live a good life?
Yeah, these are huge questions.
So in this deep dive, we're going to try to make these complex ideas, from Plato, crystal clear.
We want to make sure everyone understands them.
Right, and show you why they're still so powerful and hopefully, like, spark some real aha moments for you.
Right, I love those aha moments.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
One of the big themes in this part of the Republic is builds on earlier stuff about, who should be in charge.
Right, who should rule?
We talked before about how philosophers are actually the best candidates for leadership.
Yeah, because of their love of truth and all that.
Exactly. They're not focused on, what's trendy or what will make them personally rich or powerful.
They're looking for something much deeper.
Right. A deeper and more stable form of knowledge. Like they're trying to understand the fundamental reality of things.
Yeah, but Adimantus brings up a really good point, doesn't he?
He does. He's like, hold on a second. In the real world philosophers, they don't always seem so great.
Yeah, they seem out of touch.
Right. Or even harmful sometimes.
Okay, so how does Socrates respond to that? Because it's a good question, right? Like,
Yeah.
if philosophers are so wise, why aren't they running things?
So Socrates, he uses this really powerful parable about a ship.
Oh, yeah, the ship analogy.
Okay, so picture this. You've got a ship. The captain is the only one who actually knows how to sail.
He's the expert.
But the crew, they're all fighting for control.
They have no idea what they're doing.
Right, they just want power, but they don't know how to steer the ship.
It's a great image. It's like that old saying, too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly. So the true leader, the philosopher according to Plato, is like that skilled but ignored captain.
So they have the knowledge and the ability to guide the ship of state safely.
But they get pushed aside by people who are motivated by, less informed desires.
Yeah, it's almost like people don't always recognize real expertise when they see it.
Right. They go for the loudest voice or the most charismatic personality, even if those people have no idea what they're doing.
And this is like a timeless problem, isn't it?
It really is. It's about recognizing and valuing true expertise over popular opinion.
Which is super hard, especially today with, social media and all that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Socrates goes on to explain why people who could be really wise might actually end up going the wrong way.
Right, like why they might not reach their full potential.
So he talks about this idea of the corruption of the best natures.
Yeah, think about it. Societal pressures, public opinion, and the desire for wealth and power can all pull someone away from wisdom.
It's like they get tempted by the wrong things.
Exactly. And Socrates, he calls public opinion the real sophist.
Which is interesting.
Because the sophists, they were known for their persuasive rhetoric.
But it was all about winning arguments, not necessarily about truth.
Right. So it's like public opinion can be this really persuasive force that leads people astray, even if they have the potential for wisdom.
Yeah, it's almost like peer pressure, but on a much larger scale.
Exactly. It's like the pressure to conform.
And he uses these examples of Alcibiades and Cressius, right?
Yeah, they were these figures who seemed really promising at first.
But they ended up doing some pretty terrible things.
Right. They became known for their corruption and their abuse of power.
So it's a reminder that potential isn't enough.
You have to nurture that potential and protect it from, bad influences.
And I think that's a really important message for, everyone to hear.
It is. How many brilliant minds are we losing today because of the pressures of modern life?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And Plato uses this really interesting image to describe this problem.
Oh, yeah, he says philosophy is being, like, abandoned by her rightful protectors.
It's like she's being left defenseless.
And instead, she's being surrounded by all these unworthy suitors.
People who are just interested in philosophy for the wrong reason.
Right, like they think it will make them look smart or give them status.
But they don't really care about truth or understanding.
Right, they're just posing.
Yeah, it's like they want the appearance of wisdom without the substance.
Exactly.
So it really highlights how hard it is to stay true to your intellectual values in a world that doesn't always prioritize them.
It's like swimming upstream.
And I think this connects directly to what you were saying earlier about wanting to get to the heart of things efficiently.
Right, like not getting bogged down in all the noise and misinformation.
Because there's so much of that out there.
There really is. It's overwhelming.
Okay, so this next part is where things get really interesting.
Buckle up.
So the next big theme is this idea of the soul transforming from ignorance to enlightenment.
And Plato uses this amazing metaphor of moving from darkness to light.
It's so powerful.
Right, it's not just about learning new facts.
It's about a fundamental change in how you see the world.
It's about turning away from shadows and illusion.
And facing the truth.
Exactly. And he says that philosophy, especially this method called dialectic, it's like the engine that drives this transformation.
It's the key.
So dialectic, it's this process of rigorous questioning and logical analysis.
It's about testing your beliefs and challenging assumptions.
Right. It's like a workout for your mind.
Yeah, and Plato says this process is what leads to the conversion of a soul from night to day, from becoming to being.
So it's not just about existing in the world.
It's about understanding the true nature of reality.
Right. It's about moving from the world of appearances to the world of true forms.
Okay, so education is obviously really important to Plato.
It's essential.
But he says that earlier forms of education, like music and physical training, they're not enough to achieve this higher level of understanding.
They're important, but they're not the whole story.
They're like the foundation.
Right. They help you develop good character and a sense of harmony.
But they don't give you the tools you need to really grasp abstract truths.
That's where math comes in.
Oh yeah, math is really important to Plato.
Especially arithmetic.
Okay, why is that?
He says it's a conductor to thought and being.
So it's like a bridge between the physical world and the world of ideas.
Exactly. And he points out that our senses can be really misleading.
Like we can be tricked by what we see and hear.
Right. But math, it helps us see beyond those illusions.
He uses the example of seeing 3 fingers.
Right. We see 3 separate things.
But the concept of the number 3, it helps us understand that there's this unifying idea behind those 3 things.
And that idea, it exists independently of our perception.
So math forces us to think beyond just what we can see and touch.
It helps us understand abstract concepts.
And that's really important for philosophy.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is kind of blowing my mind a little bit.
Right.
It's like Plato is saying that math is not just about like balancing your checkbook.
It's about understanding the fundamental structure of reality.
Which is pretty wild.
And he makes this really interesting point about how arithmetic actually exposes the contradictions in our sensory experiences.
What does that mean?
Like we might perceive something as big or small.
But only in relation to something else.
Right. But the intellect, through numbers, it can understand the concept of bigness or smallness independently.
As like abstract ideas.
Exactly. So it's like math helps us resolve these conflicts between what we perceive and what we know intellectually.
It's like it trains our minds to think more clearly and abstractly.
And that's a really important step in the journey towards wisdom.
Okay, so Plato also talks about the Pythagorean understanding of harmonics and astronomy.
Yeah, those were really respected fields back then.
Like people thought they were super important.
Right. But Plato, he actually critiques them.
Really? Why?
He says they're too focused on what's observable.
Like the sounds we hear and the movements of the stars?
Right. But he says we need to go deeper than that.
We need to understand the mathematical principles behind those things.
The underlying harmonies that govern them.
So it's like he's pushing for a more abstract level of understanding.
He's saying, don't just look at the surface, look at the underlying structure.
And this is where dialectic really becomes the star of the show.
Center stage.
So Plato presents dialectic as like the ultimate intellectual discipline.
The king of all disciplines.
It's the one that can actually help us grasp the true essence of things.
It goes beyond just assumptions or hypotheses.
It's about getting to the principle which is above hypotheses.
And it's a really demanding process.
How so?
It involves asking and answering all these really tough questions.
It's about constantly challenging your beliefs.
And testing them against reason and logic.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart.
It's like a philosophical stress test.
You're putting your ideas through the ringer.
Exactly. And the goal is to arrive at a deeper, more solid understanding of reality.
Okay, so this is starting to sound a little intimidating.
I know it can be, but it's also really exciting.
Because it's like you're on this quest for truth.
You're trying to uncover what's really real.
And Plato says that this process of dialectic, it leads the soul towards the light of the upper world.
The realm of true being and genuine understanding.
It's like you're ascending to a higher level of consciousness.
And he even outlines this hierarchy of 4 faculties of the soul.
Okay, break that down for me.
So there's reason or intellect, understanding, faith or belief, and the perception of shadows or illusions.
Okay, so those are like different levels of our mental abilities.
Right, and each faculty corresponds to a different level of reality.
So the lowest level is the perception of shadows.
That's like being stuck in the world of appearances.
And the highest level is reason or intellect.
That's where dialectic resides.
And that's the faculty that allows us to understand the true forms.
The eternal, unchanging realities behind the world of appearances.
So it's like a ladder.
We're climbing from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge.
And dialectic is the key to reaching the top.
It's the coping stone of the sciences.
It integrates and unifies all other forms of knowledge. And this is all super important for those future rulers, right?
Absolutely.
Because they need to be able to engage in this kind of deep critical thinking.
They can't just follow instructions blindly.
They need to be able to ask the right questions.
And understand the underlying principles behind things.
So it's not just about being smart.
It's about being wise.
And that brings us to a really important question.
What kind of people are even capable of this?
Right. Like who can actually become these enlightened rulers?
Plato has some pretty specific ideas about that.
Okay, so what are the essential characteristics of these philosopher-kings in training?
Well, first of all, they have to be really good at learning.
Like they need to be quick studies.
Right. He says they need keenness and ready powers of acquisition.
Because the intellectual demands of philosophy are intense.
You can't be someone who gets tired easily or gives up when things get tough.
You need to be able to keep pace.
And you need a really good memory.
Why is that so important?
Because you need to be able to retain all the knowledge you're gaining.
And see the connections between different ideas.
Right. It's not just about memorizing facts.
It's about understanding how those facts fit together.
Exactly. And Plato also says these future rulers need to be unwearied, solid men who are lovers of labor.
So they need to be hard workers.
And they need to be dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge.
It's not a hobby for them.
It's their life's work.
So basically, they can't be slackers.
They need intellectual stamina.
Yeah, they need to be able to go the distance.
And he emphasizes that their minds shouldn't faint from the severity of study.
So they need to be tough, both mentally and emotionally.
But it's not just about intellectual ability.
There's a moral component too, right?
Absolutely. He says these potential rulers, they need to be tested.
Okay, like how?
Well, he suggests putting them in situations where they might be tempted to forget or be deceived about the true principles they've learned.
So it's like a test of their character.
Exactly. Can they resist temptation? Can they stay true to their values even when it's hard?
Because a ruler who can be easily misled, that's really dangerous.
It could have terrible consequences for everyone.
Yeah, they could lead the whole state down the wrong path.
Exactly. So these tests, they're designed to weed out anyone who's not truly committed to truth and justice.
It's like a moral filter.
And then there's a third type of test. Enchantments.
What are enchantments?
It's a little vague, but it seems like he's talking about things like the allure of power, the flattery of others, the sway of popular opinion.
So basically anything that could distract you from the truth.
Exactly. It's about being able to see through those illusions and stay focused on what's really important.
So these potential rulers, they need to be really discerning.
They need to be able to tell the difference between real and fake.
And they need to be able to resist those temptations.
It's a tall order.
It is. So by the age of 30, those who have passed all these tests,
They've shown that they're intelligent, they're steadfast, and they can handle dialectic.
and they're ready for the next level.
This is where they start to really give up the use of sight and the other senses.
But not literally, right?
Right, it's metaphorical.
So it's like they're moving beyond the limitations of the physical world
They're relying more and more on their intellect.
to understand the true nature of being.
And this is where dialectic really comes into its own.
It's the tool that allows them to grasp the forms.
The eternal realities that lie beyond the world of appearances.
And Plato is very clear about the need for caution in this process.
You don't want just anyone messing around with these ideas.
It's too important.
The well-being of the state depends on it.
So the selection process has to be super rigorous.
You need to make sure you're choosing the right people.
Okay, so let's recap what we've learned in this deep dive into Book 7.
Yeah, let's bring it all together.
We've talked about Plato's argument for the philosopher-ruler,
And the challenges they face.
the corrupting influences they have to overcome.
We've explored the idea of philosophy and dialectic as a journey from ignorance to enlightenment.
And we've looked at the specific qualities that these future rulers need to possess.
Both intellectual and moral.
So these are all really ancient ideas.
But they're still relevant today.
Absolutely. Like, how do we find wise and ethical leaders?
How do we navigate a world that's full of information and misinformation?
How do we develop our own critical thinking skills?
These are questions that Plato was asking thousands of years ago.
And they're still just as important today.
More important than ever.
So here's a final thought for you to consider.
Chew on this.
In a world that's so focused on immediate gratification and practical skills,
What role should the pursuit of abstract truth and dialectical reasoning play?
especially when it comes to shaping our leaders and our own understanding of the world?
How does Plato's idea of the journey from darkness to light resonate with you?
How does it apply to your own life?
That's something to think about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
See you next time.